Hey everyone, this is Black Binder, and today we are revisiting Tales of Majeyal. Now, when I'm playing games like Tales of Majeyal or Pillars of Eternity when I'm in a dungeon or something, I like to watch guides. Sometimes of the games I'm playing, sometimes not. But I like watching guides of how to build characters or just of nuanced things in games. And I realize on YouTube, at least, I haven't found any, but for Tales of Majeyal, I haven't really found any good guides for most of the classes. So I want to do a guide for each class, an informal, like, go over the skills, go the items you want, and what you should do during the game. But I want to do it for most of the classes. I'm not going to be doing it for Archer because I really only played them once, and I don't know enough about them to confidently make a guide about. But I think I can do quite a bit of the other classes, so let's start right with it. Now, today we are going to start with a Cursed. The Cursed is a very quick melee kind of. They're supposed to be mind powery, but if you're playing on Insane, you're not going to be able to use the mind power stuff to very great effect. But otherwise, they make pretty decent melee attackers because of Rampage. Rampage is one of the skills you can unlock at level 10, or if you're a Cornac, which is like the base human, you can unlock it at level 1. It's one of the few skill trees that are locked that you can actually unlock at level 1. Normally, most skill trees, if you look at is that for all of the cursed trees? Yeah, you can unlock all of the cursed trees at level 0. I didn't know that. Learn something new every day. But anyway, most unlocks in the class side require you to be level 10 to learn the first skill, so they won't let you learn the tree until level 10, even if you have a category point. But let's get into race selection. Normally for Cursed, I'll go Ogre. The reason I go Ogre is because an Ogre can dual wield with one two-hander and an offhander eventually, once they get Grizzly Constitution at 5 out of 5. However, the Crog brings something to the table that the Cursed really needs, and that is damage reduction on the enemy. So, the Crog racial, the very first one, it's called Wrath of the Wilds. You unleash the Wrath of the Wilds for 5 turns. When you deal damage to a creature while Wrath is active, you have an 8% chance or 100% chance for the first creature to hit to stun them for 3 turns. Now, that's a little confusing. The 8% chance, I believe, is for AoE attacks, or attacks that hit more than one target. So it's actually a 100% stun if you're only against one person. So it's actually very, very good because Krogs, this lasts for, how long is the duration? It's for 5 turns. So basically what it is an 8-turn stun that you can apply every turn. So even if they somehow get rid of it, you put it right back on them. And stun does a crap ton it does damage reduction, it stops their skills from cooling down and everything. So it's a good way to shore up the Curse's very lacking defenses. But let's go through what their skills are and what you're going to be taking first. Now, I always take 1 point in Slash. It does level up decently, but the problem is you can't guarantee that you're going to have a lot of hate. And well, I guess I'll just read the description of it first. You slash wildly at your target for 116% damage at 0 hate to 153% damage at 100 hate. At level 3, any wound you inflict with this carries a part of your curse, reducing the effectiveness of healing by 33% for 15 turns. The effect will stack. Now, eventually, I will get it to level 3. I don't like the reduce effectiveness of healing items because, like Bleeding Strike and stuff like that, or the Bleeding Strike you can get on rings, because it never seems to work. Like, they shrug it off, or it'll go off on targets I don't need it to go off on. Like the Bulwark, Ran bosses, it seems like they just shrug it off. But Slash, eventually you'll take to 3, but I like to leave it at 1 for pretty much most of the game. It's when I'm in the Prides where I'll actually take more than 1 point in it. The next one, Frenzy. I do use this a lot, but not so much. Assault Frenzy is assault nearby foes with 4 fast attacks for 18% at 0 hate to 36% at 100 hate damage each. Stalked prey are always targeted if nearby. Stalk is this. It's stalking. It happens when you attack a foe twice in a row. You start getting stacking buffs against that one target. So these 4 random attacks actually turn into 4 focused attacks on one target if he's stalking. At level 3, the intensity of your assault overwhelms anyone who's struck, reducing their accuracy by 12 for 3 turns. That is largely irrelevant. It really doesn't matter. Accuracy against you is not going to matter, especially on Insane. Now, on Normal and Nightmare, you can get defense up decently enough, especially with a Brawler. But on Insane, it's not gonna. Your defense is always going to be less than their accuracy as it is. So reducing their accuracy by 12 isn't really going to do that much. The next skill in the slaughter tree is very nice. Reckless Charge. You charge through your opponents, attacking anyone near your path for 35% at 0 hate to 70% at 100 hate. Small opponents may be knocked away from your path. You can attack a maximum of 2 times. You can hit the target along your path more than once. All right, this maximum of 2 attacks, it goes up as you level the skill, which is awesome. The damage goes up too, but what you really want to use this for, it's like Rush, except you also get free attacks on your targets. Don't ever count on like your small opponents. That this actually goes up to medium and then I think large once you 5 out of 5 it for the opponents that might be knocked away from your path, but I never use it for that because what you want to do is you want to run alongside your targets, because pretty much every time I've used this, if I try to run into something, I'm stopped. I don't know what it's checking to see if you can actually knock your opponent away, but it doesn't seem to work that often, so don't count on it. What you want it for is either you want to run through a bunch of melee enemies, like skirt the side of them, don't actually run through them, or save it for an escape where you might be able to kill something, or if you've got the Blood Collar ring, it's an escape plus a tiny heal. Blood Collar is a decent life leech ring. Alright, Cleave. While active, every swing of your weapon has a 14% if one-handed or 27% if two-handed chance of striking a second nearby target for 33% to 40% damage, and you get an extra 25% if you're two-handing it, basically. The recklessness of your attacks brings you bad luck, -3. That luck, I've heard luck described as 0.5 dexterity and 0.5 cunning, so it's you basically losing 3 dexterity. It's really not, it's not a big debuff. So now the cap abilities for Slaughter, Endless Hunt, and Strife are all active. They're sustainable abilities, so you leave them on and then you get these passive abilities. I don't like Cleave. It just has a very low chance of happening, and even if it happens, it's a low damage to a target that you're not even targeting. So, I mean, it's good for trash, but we have something better for trash later on. Alright, so you won't be able to leave this on with Surge or Repel, and this is not a very good one anyway. So what I do is I stop with Reckless Charge. I'll usually put 3 points in Reckless Charge and then max it out late game, because it's just so nice. It increases the range. 4 range early on is pretty low. Now, something I didn't go over beforehand, why we're not maxing these out for damage, because if you look, you can never count, how do we get over there? Alright, if you look over here, you slash wildly at your target for 124%. Upgrading it only gives you another 4% damage at 0 hate. Now, at max hate, you're getting, what is it, it's about a 20% increase, 23% increase. Now, that's decent, that's good. But you'll never be at 100 hate. Well, you will be. The Cursed, they don't use a lot of hate like the Doomed does, but I don't like counting on getting that extra 20% damage by leaving myself at 100 hate, because it's just not something that I can rely on, and they're good bumpers anyway. So normally I'll leave this for just a big hit on an enemy if I have 100 hate and I know I'm not going to need to manually use Rampage later. Alright, now let's go down to Endless Hunt. I actually really, really like this tree on the Cursed. Before I got Crog, which is a newer race, the race we're using for this, and their stun, I relied heavily on Endless Hunt, and I'll talk about why in a second. But anyway, stock. This is a sustainable ability. And it also doesn't cost you anything to leave it on, so it's basically just a permanent buff, unless it gets removed. When you focus your attacks on a single foe and strike them in melee for 2 consecutive turns, your hatred of them overcomes you, and you begin to stalk them with single-minded purpose. The effect will last for 40 turns or until your prey is dead. Stalking gives you bonuses against your foe that grow each turn you hit them and diminish each turn you don't. Alright, so basically, what this gets up to is... Just a second. Alright, it's going to give you accuracy, melee damage, and hate per turn the prey was hit. And it actually gets up pretty decently. 4 and 5 don't give you as big a bonuses. You can see it's only +1 accuracy and +3% damage at the max bonus level 3. But, I mean, look at this. This is an extra 7 accuracy. Well, let's look at this. It's an extra 9 accuracy just for hitting a target that you're going to hit anyway. And an extra 20% melee damage. That's really good. The hate is also a bonus, but like I said, hate with the curse is kind of weird. Sometimes when you want it, you're not going to have it, and a lot of the times you're going to have an abundance of it that you don't even know what to do with. But yeah, let's just leave it at that. It's good to have. Eventually you can max it out if you have the points, which you should, because Fears is not a viable tree to go into. Neither is Predator really, but I like Predator, so it's kind of unique. So let's go on. Beckon. Now, I've never gotten a clear answer on this, and I can't tell because the effect is so low, but let's read it. The connection between predator and prey allows you to speak to the mind of your target and beckon them closer. For 7 turns, they will try to come to you, even pushing others aside to do so. They will move towards you instead of acting 27% of the time, but can save versus mind power to slow the effect. I think that just means... It doesn't last for the full 7 turns, but I'm actually not sure. If they take significant damage, the beckoning may be overcome altogether. The effect makes concentration difficult for your target, reducing spell power and mind power by 4. That won't matter until they reach you, because on Insane, the spell power and the mind power of the enemy are checked against your saves, and it's just not very easy to go high saves in Insane, so you're mostly just ignoring that. So their spell power and mind power are always going to beat yours anyway. The spell power and mind power reduction increases with your willpower. Also, your willpower is not going to be super high anyway. It can be. You can go high willpower and try to make Gloom work, but I don't. So I basically build him as a melee powerhouse because Rampage is fun. But anyway, Beckon is good because it can cause them to waste their turn moving towards you. But the reason why I don't rate it much higher than I do is because I've never gotten a clear answer on whether or not, and I've tried to test it, but because it's only a 27% chance of happening, it gets higher, but not by much. I can't tell if it actually works while they're next to you. If it worked while it was next to you, it would be really nice. But I think once they get to you, if they try to move towards you, they just bump you anyway. So, like the melee targets that you'd want to beckon, you're just basically dragging them into you anyway. They're going to be bumping you regardless. So, I don't know. Also, when they're next to you, you're going to be doing massive damage against them, so it'll probably break it altogether. Alright, this is what I normally rely on for Rand bosses in Insane with a Cursed before I got to Crog, which is Harass Prey. Harass your stalked victim with 2 quick attacks for 35% to 67% damage. Not great, but decent enough. Each attack that scores a hit disrupts 1 talent, rune, or infusion for 4 turns. Now, that may not sound great, but it is actually good, especially on some of the Rand bosses. You're going to be fighting for a while, so that 4 turns, it's two talents for 4 turns if you hit them with each attack. Your opponent will be unnerved by the attacks, reducing the damage they deal by 24% for 2 turns. Now, that 24% gets up to like 60%. So, for the same reason we use the Crog stun, that's what we use Harass Prey for, is a huge damage reduction. It only lasts for 2 turns, and that 2 turns never increases, but that still gives you your chance to attack, and if you need to afterwards you can run away, or you can use those 2 turns to before you attack or before you harass prey, like a hardcore melee ran boss will take you down pretty quickly. So you get under 50%, then you use harass prey and use that 2 turns to either heal yourself or shield yourself, or you can use a regain infusion without having to worry about them killing you before the regain infusion starts healing you enough to overcome their damage. So harass prey is a big part of, if you're not using Crog, or even if you are, just to extend the amount of time that they're doing very low damage. But harass prey is very useful. So Surge. Let hate fuel your movements. While active, you gain 11% movement speed. The recklessness of your movement speed brings you bad luck. Yeah, it's luck -3. It's the same penalty as Cleave and Repel. The speed of your movements, combined with the balance and utility of 2 weapons, gives you extra defense while dual wielding. For the same reason, the accuracy penalty doesn't matter. The bonus defense really doesn't matter. 4 extra defense, it's not going to do anything. So that part of this is just completely useless. But Surge, it would be decent. I think it gets up to about 40% movement speed, maybe 50, at 5 out of 5. But for reasons we'll go over later, but basically because of Rampage, this is completely useless. Or superfluous, let's say. You're already going to have massive amounts of movement speed all the time. So you don't need this. Dominate. This is the Strife tree. Dominate, it's pretty helpful. Turn your attention to a nearby foe and dominate them with your overwhelming presence. If the target fails to save versus your mind power, it will be unable to move for 3 turns and vulnerable to attacks. They will lose 3 armor, 4 defense, and your attacks will gain 22% resistance penetration. If the target is adjacent to you, your domination will include a melee attack. Okay, that last part's the important part. If you're going to be bumping them anyway, you can dominate, and you might overcome their mind save. You might not. You probably won't, actually. But the bonuses there are just too big to not try. The 22% resistance penetration is a big one. You'll want to get close to 100% physical resistance penetration anyway, but having extra is always good, and you get it early on, which you can run into physical resistant mobs early on in Insane. So it's actually, because you're already going to attack anyway, and you need ways to spend your hate, this is actually a decent ability. If you're going to bump, you might as well dominate. All right, Preternatural Senses. This is very close to my favorite ability on the Cursed. It's behind Rampage, obviously, and I like Harass Prey, but this is so much easier to use. Your Preternatural Senses aid you in your hunt for the next victim. You sense foes in a radius of 2. Sounds like that sucks, right? Well, it goes up to 5 or 6, I can't remember. But you can see them through walls, and when you see them through walls, you can beckon them. Like, you don't have to be able, you don't need a clear line of sight for beckon. So with Preternatural, you can see guys on the other side of the wall and beckon them and just have them already moving towards you. So it's kind of nice. The second part, not so great, which is also increases stealth detection by 22 and invisibility detection by 22. Some people swear by invisibility detection, especially on Insane and Madness, but I don't ever have a problem with invis enemies. And if I do, they're popping out and killing me in one shot with like Shadow Blades, Orc Shadow Blade assassins who use Mind Stars. So I don't have like a bunch of mind resistance, because you don't stack mind resistance because there's not a lot of places where you're going to get it, but Mind Stars do mind damage on physical attacks. So that is a reason why you might want that. But it's not a situation you're going to run into all that often. Like, I can think of 2 times where I've run into an assassin that used Mind Stars on me. You will always sense a stalked victim in a radius of 10. That's also a good part too. So like necromancers are especially annoying because they can heal themselves and they impending doom you, which hurts a lot. And if you kill the necromancer, the impending doom debuff will wear off. So if they teleport away, having a sight radius of 10, like sensing them even through walls, it'll give you a better chance of knowing exactly where they are, so you can get to them with your immense movement speed before their teleport cools down, and before they heal up all the way. So that'll give you a better chance of actually tracking them down and killing them. It's not a situation you run into a lot, maybe once or twice per game, but it is super annoying, so it's nice to have. Blindside. I really like this spell as well. With blinding speed, you suddenly appear next to a target up to 6 spaces away and attack for 39 to 131% damage. Your sudden appearance catches everyone off guard, giving you extra 7 defense. That doesn't matter. The defense boost improves with your strength, but I mean, I guess it's going to give you a big boost to defense because you're going to have huge strength regardless. But what this is it's a decent escape because it'll put you behind your target. So if you're engaging someone in a corridor and someone comes up behind you and you need to run, the curse have a big problem with they can't jump over targets naturally except for Blindside. This is their one ability to do that. So it's basically a way to get yourself out of a two-pronged attack. Specifically, Blindside isn't enough for this, but one of the Forbidden Tomes takes you to this very hard to kill boss, and it's all corridors with tons of enemies, and you can't kill the boss until you touch all the pedestals. So you need to be jumping over people. That is like the that's the best use for something like this, is in that area. You're going to need something else also. You won't only be able to rely on this, but it is nice in those situations. And getting trapped in a corridor will happen quite a bit if you're reckless, and I'm pretty reckless. So Blindside, good ability. It also does decent damage too, but be wary of engaging with it because it's your only hop over escape. Reckless Charge, like I said before, it almost, for me, never actually breaks through anybody, let alone 1 or 2 enemies. And Blindside you can skip over. It says range 6. That's 6 people you can skip over. Alright, Repel. This is by far my favorite of the max abilities in the Slaughter, Endless, Hunt, and Strife trees. Alright, Cursed have a huge problem against melee powerhouses, which is weird because they're a melee powerhouse. They just can't take the damage. They don't have enough passive defenses. This is one of the only passive defenses they get to melee attacks. Alright, what's it do? Rather than hide from the onslaught, you face down every threat. While active, you have an 8% chance of repelling a melee attack. It gets up to like 20%, 23%. The recklessness of your defense brings you bad luck. Yeah, we know that. Repel chances increase with your strength and when equipped with a shield. I don't think the percentage it shows is representative of whether you have a shield or not, but it is representative of your strength. But anyway, even if it isn't counting the shield, which, like if you're dual wielding or something, that 8% or that 20%, that's like a 1 in 4, 1 in 5 chance of completely negating the attacks of one of your most rough enemies to go against. Like one of the hardest enemies for you to kill, this is going to help you with that. So put on Repel, never take it off. Alright, Gloom. I've tried a Gloom build in Insane. Gloom is very nice. I really like it. But the problem with Gloom is the best way to use Glooms, the people you want to be glooming, well, let's go over the caveats after we explain the abilities so you know what it is. Gloom. It doesn't cost anything. It's a sustained ability, and a terrible gloom surrounds you, affecting all those who approach to within radius 3. Each turn those caught in your gloom must save against your mind power or have an 8% chance to suffer from slowness, stun, or confusion. This ability is innate and carries no cost to activate or deactivate. Each point in gloom increases the mind power of all gloom effects. Current +1. Alright, so the last part of that, it makes it sound like you can increase these and it'll give you enough mind power to actually be able to use it in Insane Endgame, but it really isn't. It's not going to be enough mind power to make it usable unless you're specifically building for mind power, and if you are building for mind power, it's taking away from your physical power, which is really what you want. Now, it's got an 8% chance to slow, stun, or confuse. Now that 8% chance goes up quite decently. It's got a decent chance to work, and on trash mobs it will. I have specifically built a Gloom curse before, but the problem is the entire Gloomed tree minus the capstone ability is completely overridden by random Gloom chance on weapons, and you attack so many times, especially with like Frenzy, if you can get it all on the same target, that random gloom chance is going to be going off all the time. Like, you can seriously get up a 50% random gloom chance on a two-hander. On a one-hander, I think the biggest I've ever seen is around 30%, 35%, but don't quote me on that. I get crap RNG, so it could probably go higher. But anyway, that's why this isn't very useful. This will work on trash mobs, but we don't care about trash mobs. You can take out trash mobs fairly easily, especially endgame. In the beginning, obviously, trash mobs are going to be difficult, but we'll only take 1 point in this, and that's just to get to the capstone ability. Okay, so weakness. Each turn, those caught in your gloom must save against your mind power or have an 8% chance to be crippled by fear for 3 turns, reducing the damage they inflict by 14%. That would be good, except it's not going to work on the targets you need it to. The Rand bosses. The first time you melee strike a foe after they have been weakened will give you 2 hate. That's decent, but like I said, cursed hate is weird. This would be a good skill if you could get high enough mind power. Dismay. Each turn, those caught in your gloom must save against your mind power. We're seeing a running theme here. Or have a 4% chance of becoming dismayed for 3 turns. When dismayed, the first attack against the foe will result in a critical hit. This one is completely useless because as a meleeer, you're going to have at or very close to 100% crit chance. It's pretty easy on Insane, at least. I don't know about Normal and Nightmare anymore. It's been too long since I've played them seriously. But on Insane, you're going to have so much chances to get increased crit chance, especially if you're going Ogre or Crog. You'll be using an offhand. For Ogre, it's a little bit easier because daggers have bigger crit chance, and they can only use a dagger really in the offhand. They have other options, but dagger is really the only real option, unless you go Exotic Mastery, which is it's a good way to go, but nobody ever does. With Crog, you'll be using 2 normal one-handers, so that crit chance, it's not going to be as easy to hit 100%, but it's still very doable. So this is completely useless. It's the same reason I hate stealth. Guaranteed critical hits don't mean anything when you already have 100% crit chance. Sanctuary. Now this is the reason we go down the gloom tree at all. It's a very, very, very useful. Your gloom has become a sanctuary from the outside world. Damage from any attack that originates beyond the boundary of your gloom, so 3 radius. That's actually, like if you ever try running through a dungeon with 3 light radius, it's a very small area. And all the damage from outside the boundary of your gloom is reduced by 13%. It gets up to about 26% pretty easily. And it's very, very nice. I'll cap this out even if it's only like 2 or 3% at the last point, just because you need it. Like I said, the passive defenses for Cursed aren't great. This is about the only real one you're going to get unless you go anti-magic. You got 1 against ranged and 1 against melee. Harass Prey is good too, but you can't count on it. Because even trash mages will do decent damage to you. So you can't be harassing prey everyone. That's really just for the melee powerhouses that you go against. Alright, Cursed, Rampage. This is the reason you pick a Cursed. Now, if you're playing Adventurer, Rampage, it's almost an immediate lock-in for me. But anyway, let's go over it. You enter a terrible rampage for 5 turns, up to a maximum of 8 turns, destroying everything in your path. Starting a rampage is instantaneous. You may also enter a rampage, 50% chance, when you're hit for more than 8% of your max life. In Insane, that's pretty much every hit. So I rarely have to activate Rampage on my own. I only activate Rampage on my own if I need an escape. I just let the enemy activate it for me. Any talent, rune, or infusion you use while rampaging becomes a distraction and reduces the duration of the rampage by 1. That sounds like a big deal, but it's not really. Your first movement while rampaging increases the rampage duration by 1. So, what you want to do is use your instant runes and infusions before you use Rampage. Obviously, if you're letting it activate when the enemy activates it, it doesn't really matter. But also, because the enemy activates it so often, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter if you use your infusions afterwards or your talents, because it's going to activate as soon as it wears off anyway. All right, Brutality. Oh, what? We didn't even go over what it does. Rampage Bonus gets you 140% movement speed and 22% attack speed. Those go up quite a bit. The movement speed especially gets up to about 360%, and the attack speed bonus gets around 50%. So that's why I said Surge is pretty useless. You're always going to be rampaging anyway, and so it's basically a permanent 360% movement speed when you're in battle. Brutality. This improves Rampage even more. You attack with Mindless Brutality. The first critical hit inflicted while rampaging increases Rampage duration by 1. That's good, because you'll always be critting, so it's basically a perma 1 bonus to Rampage's duration. Now, what I'm not for certain is, it says a maximum of 8 turns for how long Rampage can last, but I think that's the maximum of what it can go up to. So if you increase it by moving, and then attacking or critting, and then shrugging damage, I think you can still use Slam to get another turn out of it. So it actually might be 9 turns, but I don't know. It's only 1 extra turn. Doesn't really matter. But this increases your physical damage by 12%. It gets up to about 30%. And your physical save increases by 6, and your mental save increases by 6. That part's pretty useless. But anyway, your physical damage increases by about 30% when this is maxed. That's very good, because basically Rampage is giving you 140% movement speed, or, well, let's cut off the percentages. It's giving you a massive boost to movement speed, it's giving you a big boost to attack speed, it's giving you a decent boost to attack damage. That's why the Cursed is a bumping melee like attacker. That's why I use him the way I use him, is because of Rampage. Alright, let's go on to Tenacity. Nothing will stop your Rampage. This is the worst skill in the game, I swear. Besides maybe Slam. You shrug off up to 13 damage each turn during your Rampage. If you shrug off more than 50 damage, the Rampage duration increases by 1. The amount of damage you can shrug off improves with your strength. Alright, it can get up to about 100 damage, but 100 damage per turn, it's just not enough. It's crap, in my opinion. I'm pretty sure they might have buffed this recently, because I remember the description being a lot longer. Actually, let me look real quick. The wiki for this is always not updated, so I can look at Tenacity, and it'll probably show me an old description for it. Alright, where are you? What is it called? Tenacity. No, it's still showing me the same thing. Oh well. You can take it if you want. You certainly have the points to, and every little bit of damage reduction helps, but I mean, it really doesn't seem like enough for me. So let's go on to Slam. I don't think I've ever taken this skill. While rampaging, you slam up to 2 adjacent opponents, stunning them for 2 turns and damaging them for between 10 and 20 physical damage. It only gets up to like 40, 50 physical damage. The first slam of at least 2 opponents increases the rampage duration by 1. Damage increases with your physical power. Now, the stun is decent enough. However, with Crog, you don't need it. It's just, even before that, it seemed like a waste of a point to me. You can grab it if you want, but again, it'll give you an extra turn of Rampage, but you're also wasting the turn using Slam when you could be doing something else. So, okay, let's go over Fears. You're never going to take Fears. The reason why is because things are immune to it, and even if they aren't, it requires mind power again, and it's not giving you anything like Gloom does, like with Sanctuary. We'll go over it anyway, just to, I don't know. We'll question my own opinion on it and see if it's actually worth using. My opinion on it has been it's not worth it for so long, I don't even remember specifically why it's not worth it, other than the fact that there's a lot of fear immune enemies. Instill fear in your target, causing one of several possible fears that lasts for 8 turns. There's also a 25% chance of instilling fear in any foe in a radius of 2. So you see, it's kind of a lot like Gloom. The target can save versus mind power to resist the effect and can be affected by multiple fears. You gain 2 new fears. The paranoid effect gives the target a 9% chance to physically attack a nearby creature, friend, or foe. If hit, their target will be afflicted with paranoia as well. The despair effect reduces the target's resistance to all damage by 6%. This is decent, but again, you're not going to have the mind power to make it work, and a lot of the times they're going to be immune to it regardless. Heighten the fears of everyone around you. Or wait, we'll go to Heightened Fear. Heighten the fears of everyone around you. Any foe you inflict at least 1 fear upon and who remains in a radius of 3 and in sight of you for 5, which would be pretty easy with stock, will gain a new fear that lasts for 8 turns. Now that's actually pretty good. The target can save versus mind power to resist the effect, and each added fear reduces the chance of another by 10%. So it's just lowering the chance by more if you want to add extra fears. You gain 2 new fears. The terrified effect causes talents and attacks to fail 7% of the time. That's good. The distress effect reduces all saves by 4. So this is a double-edged sword. You're getting 2 new fears. One of them is completely useless because it reduces saves. No. I hate saying that. It's not completely useless. But the problem is, you want to overcome their saves with your mind power even to apply distress. Reducing their saves, you need to do that before you're trying to apply the fears and glooms. So you see how it's kind of backwards? Alright, let's go on to Tyrant. Impose your tyranny on the minds of those who fear you. Your mind power is increased by 7 against foes who attempt to resist your fears. Very good. You gain 2 new fears. The haunted effect causes each existing or new fear effect that the target suffers from to inflict 13 mind damage. It's terrible. The tormented effect causes 5 apparitions to manifest and attack the target, inflicting 13 mind damage each before disappearing. Not terrible because those apparitions can eat up an attack of the enemy, or at least make them walk a different way so it takes them longer to get to you. Fear effects improve with your mind power, of course. Alright, Panic, the capstone ability. Panic your enemies within a range of 4 for 5 turns. Anyone who fails to make a mental save against your mind power has a 30% chance each turn of trying to run away from you. There's no disengagement attacks or anything in this game, so them running away from you would probably be more annoying than it would be helpful. This is an activatable ability, so like you can use it when you're in trouble. But if you're in trouble, you don't want to be, first off, using an entire turn to try to overcome the mental save of someone with a curse for just a 30% chance of it actually making them run. You know what I mean? That's a lot of ifs that it's going to happen, and even if it happens, you're still taking up a turn, so it's not going to work on everybody, guaranteed. 30% chance, not going to work on everybody. So, yeah, that's not a good ability. I'm actually thinking about doing another mind power one with Mind Stars now that Crog is out, and maybe I'll do. I think I will try another mind power one with Gloom and Fears just to see how often Fears affect Rand bosses, because I know a lot of enemies are immune to it, or at least the important ones, but who knows? Maybe the Rand bosses won't be. All right, Mark Prey. This is Predator. I really like this tree because it is unique, but it's super underpowered, and you'll find out why here soon. All right, Mark Prey. Mark a single opponent as your prey, gaining bonuses against the targeted creature's type and subtype. Bonuses scale with the experience you gain from killing your marked type. You gain experience from killing them. It's a separate bar of experience. But anyway, at 19.5 kill experience, you reach 100% effectiveness. Combat attack against the marked type gains 6% damage, while those against the marked subtype gain 15% damage. Every kill of a marked subtype gives you an additional 3 hate, regardless of your current effectiveness. Alright, each point in Mark Prey reduces the kill experience required to reach 100% effectiveness as Predator. The time it takes to get to 100% effectiveness really doesn't take very long. It's like probably only like 10 kills. I think it gets down to like 11 experience eventually. So 11 kills pretty much. But the bonuses aren't big enough for that to matter. And it's such a huge disparity, except for in certain places where you're going to be able to kill the same type of mob over and over again. The big places, it does matter, like the Orc Prides, But the biggest places like High Peak, the end of the game, it's not going to matter. And the worst part is, like, you could build up your kill experience before getting into High Peak, specifically for the final boss if you know what they are. But that means that the Mark Prey is going to be useless for most of the time you're in High Peak in the harder areas. So you see what the problem is. You can plan ahead for a tiny bonus against a specific type of enemy, but that's not huge. The problem / good thing about Predator is you don't have a lot of places to use your points, so you can take Predator and still grab your 2 inscription slots if you want to. Yeah, let's just go on from there. Anatomy. Your knowledge of your prey allows you to strike with extra precision. Attacks against the marked type gain +2 accuracy, while those against the marked subtype gain +5 accuracy. You don't have to worry about memorizing the marked type and subtype. It'll tell you over the tooltip when you use the ability. So, melee hits also gain a 3.1% chance to stun the marked subtype for 3 turns with each attack. Way too small of a chance to matter, and as a Crog, you have your stun covered already. Each point in anatomy reduces the kill experience. Gotcha. Alright, outmaneuver. Each melee hit gives you a chance to outmaneuver your marked prey, lowering their physical resistance by 8% and reducing their highest statistic by 4. Subject to your effectiveness against the marked prey, there is a 4% chance to outmaneuver your marked type and a 10% maximum chance to outmaneuver your marked subtype. The effects last for 10 turns and can accumulate. Each point in outmaneuver reduces the kill experience required to 100% effectiveness as a Predator. This is probably the most effective reason to take Predator, especially if you're having trouble gaining physical penetration. Physical resistance penetration, because the 8% can stack on itself, but again, you should aim to have the highest physical penetration that you can, so this might actually end up being useless a majority of the time. The accuracy is not, or the reduction to their highest statistic doesn't matter. It's just right click and inspect an enemy and look at their stats in Insane Endgame. It's just reducing it by 4 is not going to do anything. And even so, raising stats, look at raising it by 1. You get 1 physical power, 1 maximum, or 2 maximum encumbrance, and physical save 0.35. They're not huge benefits. So, all right, what is the last one? This is my favorite skill, favorite part of the tree, even if it's not really the most powerful. But you learn to mimic the strengths of your prey. Killing a marked subtype raises your stats to match the strength of the victim, up to a maximum of 7 total points. The maximum I've gotten up to is like 12, so subject to your current effectiveness. The effect lasts indefinitely, but only the effects of the latest kill will be applied. So basically, like, if you kill a dragon, you get 11 strength and 11 dexterity. Just a bonus to it forever, as long as you don't mark a new type. It's not a huge bonus, but it's kind of like using the sword Morgor. It's a present every time you get a new mark. You get to see what your new max stats are going to be. It's just a fun ability, and it gives you something to do other than completely waylaying your enemies the entire time. But yeah, all right. So at level 10, you're going to get a category point. Take Rampage. At level 20, you're going to get another. You can either take Predator for fun, or go the powerhouse way and grab an inscription, or Tinkers. Tinker is the way you want to go for ultimate usability on a cursed. Tinker's just too good pretty much on everybody. I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't go Tinker, but it requires an escort to you to find an escort, and it requires an expansion, so you might not have it. If you don't have Tinker, go Predator or Inscription at level 20. At level 36, you're going to get another Inscription, so or another category point. You can grab Predator or grab another Inscription. Now, when you get back from the east, you can go to Sandworm Lair and kill the backup Guardian and get Worm Bile. Now, with Worm Bile, what you're going to do here is you're either going to grab your last Inscription spot if you got Predator, or if you don't want to take Predator, use that last Inscription slot or that last category point for something special. Like, let's think. If you go anti-magic, you can grab Fungus. It's a very good use on a cursed. Or Providence via the Celestial Light Tree from an Anorithal Escort, if you can grab it, is good. What else? Yeah, that's about really the only thing you want to grab. It's either Tinker, Predator, or the Celestial Light Tree. So I don't... trying to think of any other ones you might want to take, but really they're not anything you want. Fungus, you'll have to buy Fungus. I don't think even Crog get it for free, even though they start with anti-magic. I think you still got to buy it. So that Fungus would be better than Predator, definitely, from a power perspective. But from a fun perspective, take Predator. All right, let's go over the generic abilities real quick. Everybody knows what you want to do with these. Event, get 3 out of 5 heavy armor training immediately. So immediately you want to get your strength up to 26. Actually, you want to do 28 because the heavy armors you can get in Last Hope a lot of them are going to take either 28 strength to wear or 35. You can get to 28. 35 is a little high, so just aim for 28. Light armor, don't bother with it because you don't have the mobility skill tree. Now, depending if you're playing an ogre or a Crog is easier on the generic skill points here because you can just go 5 out of 5 weapons mastery and it will count for both your weapons. Eventually on an ogre, what you want to do is max both weapons mastery and dagger mastery. Also, as a cursed, your accuracy isn't going to be the greatest. It'll be decent, but not for a while. Eventually you'll pretty much max dexterity, but until then, take combat accuracy. A lot of people say don't bother with it. On normal and nightmare, you probably really don't need to bother with it, but I always do because I hate missing. Like, missing is a huge damage per turn loss, regardless if it's a 5% miss chance or a 10% miss chance. You don't ever miss. You want to be consistent. You want to know that your attacks are going to hit. So, I will eventually go 4 out of 5 or even 5 out of 5 combat accuracy, but you can get by with 3. Anti-magic. This is a good thing to take on Cursed. I really don't like anti-magic shield, but it's not terrible. The reason I don't like it, I've taken a Mind Slayer, and if you know Mind Slayers, they have these shields, specific elemental shields. I maxed my 2 shields, and I maxed out anti-magic shield, and I got the Prodigy to make anti-magic shield even better. And the final bosses just completely exploded me. It wasn't even Argonial, it was Elandar, the magic caster, completely went through all of my magic defenses and slaughtered my Mind Slayer. So it's just, I don't think it's worth it, but with a curse you really don't have a chance. You don't have a reason, you don't have the opportunity not to take it because the trash mobs will kill you too if you don't have something like anti-magic shield and resolve. Resolve's pretty good. Alright, resolve, you stand in the way of magical damage. That which does not kill you will make you stronger. Each time you are hit by non-physical, non-mind damage, you get a 10% resistance to that element for 7 turns. Now, if anti-magic shield is not active, you also absorb part of the impact and use it to fuel your own powers, decreasing your equilibrium and increasing your stamina by 1.2 each hit. At level 5, you absorb even if anti-magic shield is active. The effects will increase with your mind power or physical power. Now, you're going to have a ton of physical power on the Cursed, so this will actually be decent. The equilibrium doesn't really matter because the only thing you're using it for is silence and anti-magic shield. So, and it's not going to decrease your equilibrium quick enough to sustain anti-magic shield, so it's not a big deal. Stamina, not a big deal, because you don't use stamina really unless you get disarm or something from a lore master. Just a second. Sorry, I didn't want to cough into the microphone. Alright, we'll go on. Resolve, good. Gives you resistances. Resistances are always good. Aura of Silence. Let out a burst of sound that silences for 3 turns all those affected in a radius of 5, including the user. For each creature affected, your equilibrium is reduced by 6, up to 5 times. The silence chance will increase with your mind power or physical power, whichever is greater. Just, goddammit, just a second. Alright. Silence, very good. It scales with your physical power, and physical power is very easy to get. It's one of the power. It is the easiest power to get over mind power and spell power. But the reason why I like this is the duration gets to be decent. It's 6 or 7 duration, for turns, and it affects those in a huge radius. I think it gets up to 10 or 11 radius, which is just crazy. This is a good way to take down the casters that are annoying you in the back. Or not take them down, but crowd control them. Alright, Anti-Magic Shield. Surround yourself with a shield that will absorb at most 28 non-physical, non-mind element damage per attack. Each time damage is absorbed by the shield, your equilibrium increases by 1 for every 30 points of damage and a check is made. If the check fails, the shield will crumble and anti-magic shield will go down. Each creature whose attack on you is absorbed or reduced by the shield also takes a backlash, dealing 14.32 mana burn damage. This may only happen up to 10 times per turn, and each time the damage is reduced by 25%. Alright, the mana burn damage doesn't matter. The damage the shield can absorb will increase with your mind power or physical power, whichever is greater. So, this actually gets up to a decent amount. And it's not per turn like Tenacity. This is crap. This is per turn. You shrug off 14 damage per turn. This is per attack. The problem is, your equilibrium increases by 1 for every 30 points of damage and a check is made. I'm guessing that's your equilibrium chance. The higher your equilibrium, it'll give you a little percentage saying how likely you are to fail the next check. Like if you're going to use an equilibrium move, it has like a percentage chance to fail. This check, if the check is made, your equilibrium, it can get up pretty high before it actually fails, like if you're lucky. But it can also fail pretty early. I've had very variable successes with the anti-magic shield. Sometimes it'll last a long time, sometimes it won't. However, it will last long enough to at least get your foot in the door and kill, or at least stun or harass whoever it is that's doing the damage to you. You shouldn't have a bunch of people shooting elements at you at once, or elemental damage at you at once. So this should last you long enough to get up close and personal. And also, this pairs well with Gloom as well, because a lot of the elemental damage you'll be taking, they're going to be farther than 3 radius out from you. Alright, Mana Clash. I like it. A lot of people don't, but it's really not that great. It can be great early on if you get it for a specific fight that I'm thinking of, but I'll let you know after I read the skill. Drain 138 mana, 69 Vim, 34 positive and negative energies from your target, triggering a chain reaction that explodes in a burst of arcane damage. The damage done is equal to 100% of the mana drained, 200% of the Vim drained, and 400% of the positive or negative energy drained, whichever is higher. This effect is called a mana burn. In addition, for 4 turns, all your attacks also do 15% mana burn damage. That's actually not bad. I must not have read this skill for a while, or they buffed it, because I don't ever remember that. 15% mana burn damage. That means it takes away their resources when you attack. The effect will increase with your mind power or physical power, whichever is greater. Now, specifically, the Grand Corruptor, the safest way I've been able to do her is save up all of your fire resistance items and then let her take you into the Fearscape. What you want to have is 2 decent regeneration infusions, but if you have 50-60% fire resistance, which with Resolve you should, but anyway, you don't actually have to fight her. You can drain her Vim, because every turn she spends in the Fearscape takes more and more Vim to sustain it, and this just drains it faster. That's why I like this ability. You get it at level 12, you fight her around level 20, so you can have this. You could float 3 points into this and have it at 3 out of 5 and do a decent amount of Vim damage and just make the fight quicker. But then also, after you get out of the Fearscape, you can keep her Vim at 0 and she can literally do nothing to you but like bump at you, take a few steps away, and sometimes cast a Bone Spear or something. It's funny against her if you drain her Vim, which is easy to do because Fearscape takes a ton of Vim to sustain eventually. At first it's not too bad, but you can inspect her every turn and see how much her Vim is draining, and it's like 40 Vim per turn eventually. It's pretty crazy. Alright, Cursed Form. This is a very amazing tree for one skill. I take this in my adventure builds all the time because of the second skill in the tree. But anyway, your body's strength is fed by your hatred. This causes most forms of healing to be between 50% effective to 100% effective depending on your hate. In addition, after each kill, you store the waning life force to invigorate yourself, restoring 9 life, limited by the foe's maximum life, up to a maximum of 19 life per turn at any time. You can heal no more than... Or wait, you store that 19 health, and then you heal yourself per turn with that life. You can heal no more than 7.2 life per turn this way, and it is not affected by your hatred level or other effects. Alright, as you've probably guessed, this is a huge debuff. It's more of a debuff than it is a help. The life per turn doesn't really matter, but the healing effectiveness sucks, because with a curse it's not so bad if you can stay at near 100 hate, but basically it's lowering your heal mod at all times. It's not good. But you pay for that debuff with Relentless, or you get rewarded for that debuff with Relentless. Your thirst for blood drives your movements. You gain 15% confusion, fear, knockback, and stun immunity. The two worst effects in the game are stun and confusion. Like, the two worst effects universally. Like, obviously silence is going to be worse than confusion for a caster, but stun is the worst, followed by confusion. Confusion can be just as bad as stun, though, because you think, oh, I got a 50% chance to actually do what I want. I can just kill him, and then you'll fail 10 times in a row and die. So actually confusion can be worse if you're stubborn. But this gets you up to about 50% resistance in confusion and stun. That's one ring, one late game ring, and one late game amulet to basically get the rest of your resistances and get immunity. It's really awesome. Definitely 5 out of 5 this. Alright, Seethe. You've learned to hold onto your hate and use your suffering to fuel your body's rage. Every turn you take damage, the damage you inflict increases until it reaches a maximum of 10% chance after 5 turns. Any turn in which you do not take damage will reduce the bonus. You're always taking damage, so this is just free bonus damage. You'll want to take that and max it out eventually. As you can tell, you don't have a lot of places to put your generics without that, so you're going to be spending a lot of them in cursed form and anti-magic if you want to. With anti-magic, you really don't need to, but I would advise to. Alright, Grim Resolve. I've been taking this specifically because I wanted to try a stat maxing build. So I took skeleton, like a skeleton rampaging Mind Slayer Arcane Blade to get all these stat increasing moves, and I wanted to pile them on top of each other, but I haven't gotten him far enough to actually make it work. But anyway, Grim Resolve. You rise to meet the pain that others would inflict on you. Every turn you take damage, your strength and willpower increase until they reach a maximum of +5 after 5 turns. Any turn in which you do not take damage will reduce the bonus. While in effect, your body also has a 10% chance to overcome poisons and diseases each turn. Decent, but not. That's not the big reason you want them. Some poisons hurt a shit ton, like mucus. That can get up to like 310 damage per turn, so maybe that's useful, but you should have a healing infusion to get rid of those. Alright, the reason why I take this is the strength and willpower bonus. I like to stack it on everything else. It doesn't get much better with more points, so just grab a point in it, and I mean, it's an extra strength and willpower bonus. Alright, for Crog, we already know what Wrath of the Wilds does. This is an 8-turn stun, basically. 100% on anything that's not completely immune to stun, for the most part. Drake-infused blood. Since Zigguranth removed those filthy magic runes from your body, you have needed an alternative form of power to sustain your body. Thanks to Drake blood, you have found that power. Your blood hardens yourself, passively increasing stun resistance by 20%, fire resistance by 22%, and dealing 9 fire damage on melee attacks. You can activate this talent to change which Drake aspect to bring forth, altering the elemental type of the bonus. The resistance and damage scales with your willpower. Changing your aspect requires combat experience. You may only do so after slaying 100 enemies. Alright, this is pretty nice. With Cursed, this basically gives you immunity to stun by itself. These two skills. Now, the resistance is also nothing to sneeze at. With Resolve, it gives you a large amount of resistance to an element of your choosing. What I normally do is I switch it to physical damage. Excuse me. Because, like I said, melee are going to be your bane. Melee powerhouses. The problem with that is going physical resistance with Drake-infused blood halves the current value. So it's actually only going to give you 11% physical resistance, and going up, I think it ends up being around 36% at the highest. But you can tailor this. You can use this for whatever zone you need to be in. Like, let me think. Like if you're going into Push, that's going to be a lot of fire damage. If you're going into Daikara, you can probably put fire or lightning damage, depending on who gives you the most trouble. Or even cold if you're going up against, if you want help against the boss of the area. But I found the bosses of the area aren't the problem, it's the Rand bosses. So you can do it however you want, but I usually leave it on physical for a majority of the game. Fuel pain. I love this. Your body is used to pain. When you take a hit of 20% or more of your max life, one of your inscriptions is taken off cooldown. That is amazing. You're always gonna be getting chunked for 20%. For 20%. That's not a hard threshold to meet. Now, if you take 2 points in this, it brings it from 25 turns down to 14. So it's a huge jump just by going 2 points in it. More points than 2, it's not going to get it down much further than 14. I think you can get it down to 10. But this is an awesome ability. I love it. Warborn. You were created by Zigguranth for one purpose only, to wage war on magic. For 5 turns, all damage taken is reduced by 20%. That's awesome for a cursed. We need that. And when you activate this talent, your Wrath of Wild is put off cooldown. Our first ability. So that 8 turns of stun turns into 16 turns of stun. Or activatable whenever you want, basically. What I do is I usually activate this and then this. I have them both as V and B for my hotkeys. It's not the most efficient way to use it, but I want to be able to lower the damage at the beginning of the fight as much as I can. That's not universal. Sometimes I'll save this for maybe I won't need to use this right away again, so I'll let it cool down on its own. Problem here is the cooldown is 45 turns. It's pretty crazy. That's a very long one. For the biggest fights in the game, you're probably only going to be able to use this once, and that sucks. But the 45 cooldown isn't going to hurt you on normal mobs for the most part, but the hardest, like the final boss, that 45 cooldown is going to really hurt you. So that's not good. But also, the reason why this is also cool and kind of related to ogres, when you learn this talent, you become so strong you can dual wield any kind of one-handed weapon. That is amazing. There are a lot of good artifact one-handed weapons at the end game. Morgor you can't use. It doesn't say that it's arcane, but I think it. I've tried using it before and you can't use it, which sucks, but there are other better ones. There are other good ones as well. Not better. Morgor is amazing. You can steal talents from enemies, and Forgery of Haze on a melee character is overpowered. But anyway, this works with Cursed very well. Gives you a lot of passive, or not passive resistance. It gives you some passive resistance and some activatable overall resistance. Very good. Now, for Tinkers, you're going to want, if you go the Tinker route, you're going to want Unstoppable Force Salve, which lowers, it's basically a passive, it's a damage reduction, but it activates instantly, and it gives you die at negative health. So like you don't die at 0 life, you die at negative 200, and that'll stack with the items you take too. But the 27% damage reduction is what we want from it. Now you'll be using that even with one inscription, one decent injector. You can keep that active all the time. It's got a low enough cooldown. You can keep it active at all times. If you run into any thief escorts and you are going Tinkers, take Device Mastery, because Device Mastery still works with Tinkers. So it can lower your cooldown to the point where you can actually use Pain Suppressor Valve, and then it'll go on cooldown so quickly you'll be able to use something else before the buff wears off. But really, you should be using 2 injectors, not just 1. Especially with Cursed, since you should have 5 out of 5 inscription slots, what you want is 2 injectors and 3 inscriptions. For inscriptions, for the main part of the game, everybody says use wilds. I hate wilds. They're not useful and insane. For example, when are you ever going to die from one debuff? Like when I'm dying in-game, it's because I've got a shit ton of debuffs and I just can't get away. The worst 2 debuffs, Confusion and Stun, you're going to be immune to as it is. You don't need to be removing debuffs otherwise. So, and even the ones you do need to get rid of late game, like Burning Hex, which is a mental one that you do need to get rid of quickly, especially on the final bosses, you'll have Tinkers for that. The Tinkers remove 3 debuffs per cast, and they don't give you the percentage damage taken reduction, but they do give you what the hell? They do remove more than 1 debuff at a time, so it's more likely you're going to get rid of the debuff you want to get rid of, instead of like you've got like a 1-turn bleed left on you and you're stunned. Let's say not on curse, you're not stun immune. It'll get rid of the 1-turn bleed, and you'll 2 turns. 2-turn bleed, let's say 2-turn bleed and a 6-turn stun. If you use a physical wild, which is the one you should be using if you're using any, it'll get rid of the 2-turn bleed, and you're still stuck with the stun. It's not useful, in my opinion. In the beginning, until you get a movement infusion, I would keep a physical wild if you want, but even then, I still get rid of them. The reason why we want to use movement infusions instead of a wild is because you're going to get 5 turns around. It can be more than that, but let's just say 5 turns of stun. It's a bunch of immunities, but pin and stun are the main ones. Pin, so you can run away, and then stun, it makes you immune to stun. So before you actually get to Relentless, maybe you're fighting a Ran boss Bulwark. Now you're going to be able to tell it's a Bulwark because they have shield wall up. You can tell if they're going to stun you by what class the Ran boss is. You don't necessarily have to right click and inspect and see if they have a stun. You'll be able to tell. Mostly it's like the armored skeletons. They can get like 10 turn stuns off on you, even if they're trash mobs. And then Bulwarks are a big one that are a problem. Mind Slayers, they have a stun as well, I believe. I don't know if it's... No, it is. It's a regular stun. But anyway, what you do is you use the movement infusion right as he gets to you, and then you've got 5 turns to kill him. Now, if you can't do any meaningful amount of damage to him in 5 turns, then you need to leave. You need to run away anyway. So you'll rampage and run away, or you'll teleport away or something. But you can't kill that guy. If you can't make meaningful damage to him in 5 turns, you're not going to be able to kill him. And anyway, with a wild infusion isn't going to save you in that situation either, because the wild cooldown is just it's shorter than the movement infusion, but not by much. So what you would want to do is, with a Bulwark, it's not going to work because they have recovery. You need to do a large amount of damage in the time that you have, but you can run away and then restart the fight when your movement infusion cools down. But like I said, with the curse, we don't have to worry about that. You can actually get by without a movement infusion, but don't. Because late in the game, some movement infusions can get up to like 1,000% movement speed, and that is insane. That's 3 times the movement speed you're going to be getting from Rampage, or a little less, but whatever. So specifically for the final boss, you want to keep 1 or 2 movement infusions. Now, if you're the kind of guy who goes straight after the final bosses, like, if you know why you would do that, then you know enough of why you wouldn't need a movement infusion. However, if you're like me and you want to guarantee the victory, 2 movement infusions aren't bad either. But what I like to do is I like to go 1 movement infusion, 2 Tinkers, 1 healing infusion, and 1 regeneration infusion. The reason I go regeneration infusion instead of 2 healing infusions is because I like to have a little bit of constant healing going on to keep me topped up in dangerous situations. And with a healing infusion, I have to wait until I take a decent amount of damage before I can use it. Now, healing infusions, if you're not using the fungus tree, I think are better than regeneration infusions, just full stop. They've got really low cooldowns, down to 7 turns, and they heal quite a bit. So, like, regeneration infusions, the lowest cooldown I've ever seen is 12. So, you can roughly use healing infusions almost twice as fast. And they also heal poisons and bleeds. So, either way, I like having a regeneration infusion, but if you want to go 2 healing infusions, that's fine too. Alright, now, let's go over what we're going to use for our items. For items, if you can get pinning resistance, that's helpful. Because, obviously, as a melee character, being pinned is bad. I've never found it to be super necessary, though, because there are enemies that pin you. However, you can usually get up close to them and stun them by the time they do it, either by rushing or blindsiding or whatever. So pin resistance is more of a luxury than a necessity. What you want to do is build up your, well, you can't see, but resistances. It's not fun. If I want to win, I will build up elemental resistances, temporal resistances, dark, blight, or blight and darkness. What people normally like to do is they see a huge stat increase on an item, like 20 cunning, and they want to get that. That's not the smart move. The smart move is getting a ton of resistances, because that lowers the damage you're going to take, even not on cursed, who have problems with dying too quickly. But the reason for this being is, like I said before, the increase to stats is very minimal. Like if you, let's say you got plus 20 strength, it's not going to be a big enough deal as having this. A plus 20 strength item is hard to find. Like that's a really rare amount of strength to get on an item. So that's like the high end strength. However, finding 30% of more than one resistance on an item is pretty common. Like that's easy to get. So what you want to do is build up resistances where you can. It's hard to get 75 resistance, which is the cap on everything, but you can get pretty damn close with all your equipment slots. Especially if you go Font of Sacrifice or Font of Knowledge, which is siding with the Assassin Lord over the Merchant. But Merchant Randarts can get you close too. So basically what you want to do is itemize for resistances. On top of that, you want to resistances basically first, all right? Because you're going to have enough damage to kill pretty much everything. It's surviving long enough to kill them that's the issue. After resistances, what you want to do is plus life is always good. Especially in the beginning, you want to have plus life items. Whether or not I know a run is going well is if I find a bright brass lantern of health and dearth. It's plus 40 health, plus 4 light radius, which is awesome for the beginning. But anyway, early on you want health items. Later on you can taper off from the health items, but don't taper off too hard, because you want to prevent damage rather than just having a bunch of health, because when you prevent damage like percentage resistances, that also it increases your healing in a roundabout way. Heal mod directly increases your healing, but if you take less damage from an attack, it's easier to heal that damage, as opposed to just piling on more and more health. You can't, even if you had 5,000 health, if you can't keep yourself above a certain threshold, like trying to think, if you can't heal or shunt the damage enough to where it keeps them from hurting you more than you heal, or hurting you faster than you can kill everyone, it's not gonna work out. And that's even saying with 5,000 hit points. That's not possible in this game. At least I don't think. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Somebody prove me wrong. But you're gonna max out maybe with a Ghoul Sun Paladin around 2,000 hit points. So it's just easier to get percentage damage reduction than the amount of health required to just brute force your way through encounters. So we start with resistances, then a little health sprinkled in wherever you need to. And a big one that you can do is blindness immunity. And the Black Choker, or is it the Choker of the Dead? I can't remember. One of those amulets is actually pretty good. It's not endgame material, but it'll give you 100 negative life. So you die at negative 100 instead of 0. And then it'll also give you 100% blindness immunity. So that's a good one to cover both bases. For weapons, there's a lot of good artifact one-handers, but it's a crapshoot whether you're going to get them or not. If you explore all of the prides, you're pretty guaranteed to get one, but what you want to shoot for is a very good Randart weapon, random artifact weapon, the orange ones from the Merchant, or you want to find one out in the wild and take it to the Font of Sacrifice and get... There are 3 stats you want on it. You want physical penetration, physical crit, and then crit multi's nice, but you want high base damage. Or if you're using advanced weapon statistics, it's hard to say, you can't just say base damage because it shows you a power whatever, but the base damage, the higher the base damage, the higher damage it's going to do. So I just go off of that. But physical penetration and physical resistance penetration, and physical damage, those are possible to find on the same weapon. That's what you're shooting for, a high base damage weapon with those two stats on it. You can get actually pretty high physical penetration too. Like 20% is what I usually shoot for. 20% penetration and damage. But you're not guaranteed to find it. But you should. If not, you can just use the random artifacts you find. But yeah, definitely stay with one-handers. Don't use a dagger, even if you find a really good one. They're crap. All right, what else do we need to talk about? We got... Yeah, I think that's it. Went through all the skills. What you're going to do first is... These take willpower, which is annoying because you're really not going to use willpower. But what you're going to do stat-wise in the beginning is take strength to 28 to get your heavy armor, and then take willpower up to 36. You can use items to get to 36, but that's super annoying. So basically, you're gonna level up strength and willpower equally until you get to 36. After you get to 28 on the strength requirement for heavy armor. Forget, do any of these guys have cunning? I could have swore he had a cunning tree, but no, he doesn't. So it's willpower. So once you get to willpower 36, stop taking it. No more. You want to go max out strength, then max out cunning for more crit chance, and then max out dexterity for extra crit shrug and accuracy. The accuracy, like I said, it's going to be low for a while because you're getting dexterity so late. So at least go 3 out of 5 for combat accuracy, or 4 or 5 out of 5. What else? Thick skin, obviously, max that if you can. You can go 4 out of 5, but I always go 5 out of 5. For the beginning, if you're on insane, do this. Take this lovely guy for a walk, put him in the water, and just wait. See? Easy level up. And we got Filth Fury. Any good? 20% chance to disease and 30% global speed lowering on melee hit. So that's pretty good. But walk around, at least Last Hope, looking for guys like this. The ones with the weird colored names or the outlines that are different than the normal citizens. And drown them all. They're the ones sitting in the water. It's not your fault. They're just stupid. And do it to all of them. It'll get you a really good head start. Now, the reason why you want to play on Insane is because of this. It's easier. You can drown people, but also you start off with 250 gold. In Last Hope, in the beginning, you're going to want a two-hander, but eventually you'll switch over. I think at level 22 or 24, you'll switch over to dual wielding. But anyway, look at this. 54 base damage on an item. That's a tier 3. You can find tier 3 items in Last Hope. Tier 3 weapons, I'm sorry. Looks another 45 or 51. You want to buy the cheap ones because what you're looking for is Of Massacre. Of Massacre is the big one. And it's cheap. So, see, Of Massacre, it gives it a damage bonus. None of these are very good. 64 is okay, but it costs 180, so I wouldn't bother with that one. So yeah, I just grabbed the 54 damage projection one. Projection's also very nice because you hit things up to range 7. It's good for the beginning. But yeah, those are general tips. Those aren't really cursed tips. So hopefully I got everything. This was informal. Took forever, but whatever. More of these will come. If I missed anything, let me know, and I will try to add it in the next guide. But yeah, so please leave a like or comment below, and feel free to subscribe for more full Let's Plays, not like this one, but something like this. So take it easy. Thanks for stopping by.